Hi, I'm Scott Tonidandel, and I'm here to talk to you about my upcoming CARMA short course, Introduction to R. So a little bit about myself. I am a professor in the management department at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I'm also the program director for the organizational science PhD program here. I'm currently an associate editor at the Journal of Business and Psychology. I'm a former editor at Organizational Research Methods, and I'm also pretty heavily involved in the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, having previously served as program chair, conference chair, and as a member of the SIOP executive board. My research mostly involves looking at questions related to leadership, diversity, and research methods. Most recently, a lot of my work is actually at the interface of those different topics and computer science, data science, and people analytics. So I do a lot of work in what people would traditionally call big data, but as it applies to managing human talent in organizations. In terms of my short course, I've been working in R myself for about a dozen years. I've been teaching R to undergraduates, graduate students, and to folks like yourself who have attended a variety of these CARMA short courses in the past. Now, my course is set up to be a little bit like an introductory stats class. And what I mean by that is if you think about the common topics that are covered in an introductory stats class, they would be things like descriptive statistics and correlation, maybe some regression, things like t-tests. Also in that kind of class, you might learn a little bit about how to handle missing data or how to make a plot or how to make a table. And we're really going to cover all of those things. Now, we're not going to really talk about the stats. Like I'm not going to talk about, the stats behind a dependent samples t-test, but rather how you would actually execute a t-test in R, how you would execute linear regression, how you would look at moderation using multiple linear regression in R, and so on. Now, while we do that, we're going to learn a number of really important data management skills along the way. So we'll learn things like how do we get our data into R, how would we get data out of R, how do we get tables and figures out of R if we wanted to do that, how could we slice and dice our data, so you can imagine selecting cases, recoding variables, selecting certain variables as well to do particular analyses on. So we'll cover all of that stuff along the way. Now, I realize that there are a lot of resources out there to use R, and what makes this class a little bit unique is that obviously, one, you're going to have an instructor who you can ask questions to when things aren't clear. Two, in addition to having a person behind this, the person who's going to be teaching you, which is me, has a background in using SPSS, using SAS. I used both of those programs for about a decade before I moved over to R, so I sort of can understand the perspective that you're coming from and how you usually approach your data and the kinds of problems that you typically have. So my hope is that my examples and explanations for how things work in R make a whole lot more sense because I can talk about them in the context that you're probably a little bit more familiar with. The other thing that we're going to do that I think makes it a little bit unique is in addition to working through a bunch of lessons and teaching how to do this stuff, you're going to have a chance to do a bunch of this stuff on your own. So I've got a whole series of exercises that we're going to do every day where you'll get a chance to try and practice the things that we're doing. And then we'll come back as a group and we can go over them, see what things you had trouble with, try to explain any difficulties that you have so that we're hopefully building up your skills and your confidence so that when the class is over, you feel comfortable enough to try and do one of your own projects in R. And I'm going to give you a bunch of resources along the way so you have sort of canned scripts to do a bunch of basic things that you might want to do in R. Then the final objective is that with these canned scripts, you can apply it and do some of these basic things, but you've also now developed an understanding of how R's syntax works and how R thinks about data, so that when you want to do something more complicated than these sort of basic statistics that I'm giving you, that you know enough to use some of those other resources that are out there and modify them for your situation so that then you can execute more complicated things in R, and also give you the same kind of comfort level you'd need to maybe take one of the other CARMA classes on one of these more sophisticated methodological techniques that is also taught in R, and you actually can follow the code and understand what's going on in those classes to develop your skill set there. So that's the general plan for the course. It's usually a pretty fast-paced, fun couple days, and I'm really looking forward to having you in the class, and I'll see you soon.